Hey guys, what's up? And welcome back here to Intuitive Angling. I appreciate you guys joining me for today's episode and hanging out a little bit. Guys, today I want to go over what, in my opinion, is the number one technique that requires the most intelligence as a bass angler, and the number one technique that requires the least amount of intelligence as a bass angler. I'm going to go into this in detail, explain to you why that is. Everything else sort of falls in between as far as technique goes, but we're going to deal with what is the most and the least in terms of the angler intelligence it takes to execute those techniques. Also, guys, a couple quick things before we get started. Quick reminder, guys, that we do have my new Randy's Clearwater special here. This is from my Blaukat Power Throwback jig from Cumberland Pro Lures. It's the only silicone jig we make, guys. It's hand-tied silicone. This is got a silicone green pumpkin scale. This is designed for water visibility of over 3 feet. I'll put the Cumberland Pro Lures link in the description of the video. This is a limited run on this color, only available through that Cumberland Pro Lures link. You can get all the rest of my Power Finesse jigs at Tackle Warehouse through my Tackle Warehouse link in the description, along with the throwback jig, my fuller size, big living rubber throwback jigs, hand-tied living rubber skirts, the two best jigs on the market. But anyway, links in the description for that. And also, guys, thank you very much, man, for everybody that's taken time to subscribe here to Intuitive Angling. Free and easy to do so. We've only got 30% of the dudes that watched my videos are subscribed. It's a really good way to help the channel and push it out on the algorithm if you hit that subscribe button and the like button and that new hype button. So really appreciate that. Okay, in my opinion, guys, there's not a single technique that I have not tried in bass fishing. I've tried everything that comes out, and I have for decades and decades and decades. Literally, I think that one of the things that maybe have hurt me a little bit in my career is I've been a little too versatile in terms of I've tried to like get good at every technique, and you really can't do that in fishing and win a lot of tournaments. You sort of have to be a specialist. Usually the people that are more versatile are more consistent at getting checks, and the people that are specialists win more tournaments, but they may, be all over the board as far as their consistency. Now, out of all the techniques, I'm going to talk about the most difficult technique to master, and I want to explain in detail why, and then the most easiest technique to master in terms of how much intelligence and skill it takes to execute both of those. Okay, first of all, the most difficult technique to master and execute and understand is the entire concept and the technique of flipping and pitching. Now, a lot of people I talk a little bit about jerk baits are sometimes the hardest technique to learn, but the jerk bait technique is more about the wrist manipulation, which is sort of one element of it. In terms of the overall technique, about it requiring the most intelligence, is pitching and flipping, because let me get into and break this down a little bit. First of all, aside from the actual mechanic of it, which we'll talk about, the structure that you have to identify and break down in flipping and pitching, the complexity of it, nothing matches it. Because when you're talking about pitching and flipping, we're talking about pitching and flipping targets, visible targets most of the time. And those visible targets can be wood, rock, grass, whatever visible target that you have. Okay. Now, based upon that particular target that you're fishing, let's say, for example, we're flipping a lay-down tree in the water, which is a very common piece of structure to pitch and flip. In order to master this and to really understand the nuances of flipping and pitching, let me break down the details of this, because it's not as easy as just flipping your bait in there and catching one. Now, I'm not saying you can't do it occasionally, but when I'm talking about the intelligence level that it requires, this is going to be the difference between somebody that catches, a ton of fish flipping and pitching versus somebody that just catches an occasional fish flipping and pitching. This is the difference in it. First of all, when you're talking about the cover, and we'll use this example as a lay-down tree, but you can apply it to any type of cover, dock or flooded or grass bed or, flooded cover, whatever like that. The first thing you have to understand is, where is that fish going to be positioned within that tree? What part of the tree is that going to be in? And this is all over the place. A lot of it depends on, number one, the water visibility. Number two, it depends on the bank angle. Number three, it depends on the complexity of the tree and how far the tree goes out into the water, because based upon how deep the tree is against the bank, versus how deep the tree is against its deepest part is going to have a lot to do with the positioning. Another aspect, it has to do with your light intensity. It has to do with the cloud conditions. It has to do with the angle of sunlight. It has to do with where the shade's at on there. It has to do with the wind speed and the wind direction. It has to do with the current flow. Is the current is a factor in it, or is the current not a factor? Is it wind generated current, or is it natural lake generated current? So all of these factors have to be determined before you even get to that tree to decide where you want to place your bait at. So once you make that determination, let's say that, let me give you a scenario. Every scenario is different, but let me give you one scenario. Let's say that we're fishing a lake that has, 12 to 15 inches of visibility. So you got stained water. And then the next thing is this lay down tree. Let's say it's on a little bit steeper of a bank. And let's say the first 3 or 4 feet of the tree is in about 2 to 3 foot of water. And then the deeper part of the tree is in like 20 foot of water or 15. And let's say right where the tree enters the water, there's a nice base to it, nice thick base. In a situation like that, number one, the angle of the bank and the water clarity is going to put you and tell you where that fish is going to be, which is going to be in about 2 to 3 feet, maybe 4 feet, based upon the water visibility. So in the sense like that, the best part of that tree is going to be like the first 2 or 3 feet of the tree as it enters the water. It's not going to be out on the deeper part of the tree. It's not going to be on the edges of the tree. It's not going to be on the exterior limbs. It's going to be right down there. Based upon, again, the wind speed and the current direction, that's going to, give you another indication of where that fish is going to be positioned. It may be on the down current side of the main port of log, or if you don't have current, where's the shade going to be at? Is the shade going to be on the right hand or the left hand side of the tree? That's going to be a factor. So all of these factors that go in together is going to determine where the high percentage area of that tree is going to be. I'm not saying you couldn't catch one maybe anywhere on it, possibly, but there's going to be a far greater high percentage area that you have to identify based upon those situations. And another example contrary to that, let's say that same tree is on a flat bank and the very outside tips of the tree are in 3 foot of water. Those fish aren't going to be up on the first 2 or 3 feet of the log going into the water. They're going to be on the outside edge of that tree. And then everything else is going to be in between based upon your bank angle, your current, your wind, your water clarity, the complexity of the limbs, all that type of stuff. That's another thing, the cover complexity. Based upon how the cover is set up, you may have a real gnarly part of the tree. It may be more sparse. Every element, every piece of cover is going to be different. It doesn't matter if it's a laydown, a flooded bush, a dock, a grass bed, a lily pad field, or whatever. So the first thing you have to do is just that. That requires a lot of knowledge about bass fishing to put that bait where that fish is going to be at. The second with that requires a lot of knowledge and skill is you have to understand how to position your boat relative to that piece of cover. You have to understand how far your boat glides when you take your foot off the trolling motor in correlation with the wind speed and the wind direction and the current affecting your bait. You have to look at the cover and you have to break down the best casting angle based upon the sunlight angle and how that cover is coming in the water and the light intensity. And then once you put your boat in the ideal position where it's not too far away, not too close, you also have to approach that piece of cover with stealth. You have to glide into that piece of cover. You can't let your trolling motor get you up there and then stop you and back it off. You got to be quiet and use that trolling motor to a minimum. Okay, let's say you've got your boat in position. You understand the complexity of the piece of cover, where that fish is going to be at, the high percentage area. The next thing you have to do is you have to decide the bait. Do they want a jig? Do they want a Texas rig? Do they want a worm? Do they want a straight-tailed worm? Do they want a curly-tailed worm? Do they want a black and blue jig? Do they want a brown and orange jig? Do they want a brown trailer, a green trailer? Do they want a green trailer with chartreuse on the end of it? Do they want a black and blue jig with a black trailer or a black and blue jig with a blue trailer? Do they want a 1/4 ounce, a 3/8, a 1/2 ounce, a 3/4 ounce jig? Do they want it on 17 or 25 pound test line? Your soft plastics. Do they want a full-size brush hog or a baby brush hog? The list goes on and on about the possible lure scenarios, lure weight, rate of fall, all of that stuff. has to be calculated into the particular piece of cover before you even make your cast. And then finally, you have to execute the actual physical presentation of the cast. When you pitch in there, your bait has to land quiet. It has to land exactly where you want it. It can't land 6 inches off to the left where you want it. It has to land right where you want it. So all of these factors combined determine and make it the most difficult technique in bass fishing that requires the most intelligence. Now, it's like anything else. You can slop through an area and you might catch a fish or two, but the difference between being like a Denny Brower or a Tommy Biffle level of flipper and pitcher versus some average dude that just started doing it, it is a universe of different. And it's the difference between Tommy Biffle and Denny Brower catching 30 bass in one day and you catching 2 bass in one day. All those factors that I just laid in there. Okay, given that, the skill and the technique that requires the least amount of intelligence and the least amount of expertise is using a jig head minnow on forward-facing sonar. That is preschool, kindergarten level fishing. The fishing that I just talked to you about with pitching and flipping, it is PhD level. It is doctorate level in bass fishing. And if you use a jig head minnow and forward-facing sonar, you are a baby in kindergarten or preschool in terms of the intelligence it takes. Because number one, you don't have to find anything. You're allowing a piece of electronic technology to do all the work for you. You're allowing that electronic technology to understand the movement and the mood and the personality of the fish, where the fish is actually at, how the fish is moving, the depth of the fish, how that fish is reacting to a lure, because you can see it on your screen. It takes all of the knowledge and expertise required to fish to find the fish out of it. So you've got an umbilical cord tied to your success, like a little baby feeding on a bottle. If you use a jig head minnow and forward-facing sonar, you're literally a little baby feeding on a bottle compared to what I just talked about with flipping and pitching. And on top of that, using the jig head minnow technique, you throw a jig head minnow out there, you let it fall down through the screen till you can see the fish come over to it. You shake it around until you get the fish interested. Follow the fish down. If the fish is not interested, maybe you reel it in and put on a different color or different size, and you can literally follow the fish down the bank for half a mile and torment it until it bites. It takes no skill. It takes no talent. People that say, oh, forward-facing sonar, if it was so easy, everyone would be doing it. That's like saying if PS5 or Oculus video game was so easy, everybody would doing it, because my 9-year-old son can do it, and I don't have no clue of it, no clue how to do it. It doesn't. I could if he taught me the techniques for it. It would be easy to do. It'd be easy to master, but nevertheless, it does not take any. It's not an art form whatsoever. It's kindergarten level. Fishing and flipping and pitching and basic bass fishing techniques that require the entire aspect of fishing to find the fish and figuring out the fish, the mood and the personality, is a true art form. Fishing with forward-facing sonar and a jig head minnow, there's no art form to it whatsoever. It's basically just learning to use video game screens. It doesn't have anything to do with anything that has anything to do with fishing. So those are the two things, guys. It's the number one technique that requires most intelligence, and the one that is dumbed down the most, that is just kindergarten level fishing, basic 101 kindergarten, preschool, learning your alphabet, is forward-facing sonar, and everything else is sort of in between. Some techniques are gravitating more towards, the flipping and pitching and the difficulty. I would put jerk baits way up there at the top of that. There's some other techniques that, are close to that too. And then you've got your dumbed down techniques, that are forward-facing sonar or throwing a lipless crankbait out there and just reeling it in without knowing any other retrieves or some stuff like that. So anyway, that's my opinion on it, guys. Let me know what you think about it. We'll talk later.